Fans were shocked when Fritz was fired from American Pickers in March 2020. However, that was only a light drizzle before the big storm hit. In September 2024, the collector's world was rocked by news of his death. It broke my heart that he died, but that wasn't even the most shocking thing. The rumors about Frank's last words gave everyone who heard them chills. And just when everyone thought the shock couldn't get any worse, his estate told them something so shocking that no one could say anything. But before we talk about the shocking findings, let's remember one of the world's most dedicated collectors. You see, Fritz was born on October 11, 1963, in Davenport, Iowa. He was naturally curious, which made him stand out. Frank was interested in history when most kids his age were after fly balls and the newest comic books. He was interested in anything that had a story, no matter how small or unimportant it seemed. There were old coins, rusty beer cans, used stamps, and even razor blades that were no longer helpful. He thought that everything had a history, a reason for being here, and a place in someone's life before it came here. He wanted to know everything about it. His love for it grew as he did. The collectibles he used to carry around with him got bigger. There were old motorcycles, dirt bikes, and rare items that were worn down but held a lot of history. He used flea markets as a battlefield. He sells his yard. Frank would be the first person to knock on the door of any old barn off a forgotten highway that was full of old things. He was ready to dig through the dust. Most people thought it was just a weird hobby. It was a calling for Frank. But this is where things went in a strange direction. The man didn't jump right into the world of old things. Life pulled him in a different direction instead. And he did that job in Iowa for almost 25 years. The job was very serious and needed accuracy, attention to detail, and a strong desire to keep people safe. But his love for collecting never went away, no matter how much time he spent checking fire rules and inspecting buildings. In fact, his job made things worse. He went into old firehouses, factories that were empty, and other forgotten buildings every day. There are places full of secret gems that are just waiting for someone like him to find them and show them to the world. Now he was collecting things related to fire stations. There were leather helmets that were stained with soot, old fire alarms that used to sound through the chaos, and fire extinguishers that had been through a lot. Frank went after all of them. Not long after, he realized he was onto something bigger than just a collector's item. Not only were these artifacts interesting, they were also valuable. He began to buy things and slowly turned his hobby into a side business. Soon enough, the thought of making his hobby his job began to creep in. He had a steady job for years at this point, but he knew where his heart was, deep down. It wasn't easy for him to quit a stable job, but his real passion was stronger. He decided to jump. He looked through Frank's Things. It's a small antique store that focuses on firefighter tools and unique items. It was just a small step towards something new at first, but he didn't know that that little store would be the start of a job that would soon take him on a journey of finding treasure and becoming famous in a way he never thought possible. A lot of people knew Fritz before American Pickers. He was just a guy who liked to look for hidden riches and enjoy the thrill of the hunt. But Frank wasn't the only one who felt this way. Mike Wolf, who was also from Iowa, was also obsessed with the same thing. They weren't best friends at first, but over time their love of picking brought them together. Mike saw the big picture. He thought of picking as more than a fun thing to do. It was a way of life that could grow into something huge. Frank was happy running his store, Frank's Finds. Mike was busy filming his treasure-finding trips and trying to get people to agree to be on his TV show. Frank finally agreed after being persuaded for a while. It began with two guys hitting the road to find lost artifacts, but it quickly became a huge hit on reality TV. The first episode of American Pickers on the History Channel in 2010 was a huge hit. The first episode was seen by over 3.1 million people, making it one of the most popular network's first shows ever. However, the show's magic wasn't just in the old things, it was in the way Mike and Frank got along. There was nothing fake about their excitement, and their friendship was real. They had been making friends in the second-hand world for years, and people respected them for being honest and knowing a lot. Now that the cameras were going, they were letting people join in the fun. Mike was good at business and was always on the lookout for the next big thing. Frank, on the other hand, was the main person behind everything. He could put people at ease, changing tense talks into friendly chats. It wasn't just about the money for him. He was really interested in the stories behind the things they found. That he was real made him a fan favorite. People saw someone who loved what he did, whether he was getting excited about an old motorcycle or making a seller laugh. American Pickers was a must-see for more than 10 years. Frank and Mike went on the road every week. going through junkyards, barns and garages to find hidden riches. Danielle Colby was in charge of antique archaeology, so the three of them worked well together. They were more than just business partners, they were also friends who shared a love. One car trip can end though, and Frank's journey, which at first seemed never-ending, went in a direction no one saw coming. The first signs that something wasn't right with American Pickers didn't make people worry right away. Frank Fritz's last show was in March 2020, but most fans thought he'd be back soon because the world was so unpredictable at the time. They didn't know that Frank was having a lot of problems behind the scenes that would change everything in the end. Even though Frank Fritz didn't talk much about his problems, they got too big to ignore over time. Fans have seen his weight go up and down for years. Some people thought it was just getting older. Some people were scared that something was wrong. Frank finally told them that he had Crohn's disease, a long-term illness that affects the gut system. It hurts, is hard to plan for, and wears you out. Frank first tried to deal with it by following a strict diet, which helped him lose 65 pounds. You can't just get rid of Crohn's though, every day you have to fight it. He was always in pain, tired and worried, but he never let that stop him from doing what he loved. He was stressed for other reasons as well as his health. Fame changes everything. And it wasn't always good for Frank. Things got a lot harder after American Pickers became popular. He wasn't just a guy looking for old things anymore. He was at the top of reality TV. People knew who he was and expected him to be the funny, smart guy they saw on TV everywhere he went. They didn't see the stress that came with it though. Frank said that being in the public eye made him nervous and that it got worse over time. But things really went wrong in 2020. Frank's health got so bad that he had to have major back surgery, which wasn't a small operation. There are 185 stitches and 2 rods in his back, and it will take months for him to heal. Besides that, he was also fighting his own demons, such as addiction. At first, his departure seemed like a short break that would help him heal and get back on his feet. But as the 21st season of American Pickers went on without him, fans began to wonder what was going on. Then Mike Wolfe made it official in July 2021. Frank was leaving. In a message, Mike told Frank he would miss him and wished him the best. Frank, however, didn't seem to believe it. He said Mike's words were empty in an interview and dropped a news that shocked fans. Mike had never called to see how he was doing during his whole rehab. Frank made it clear that they had never been as close as people thought, even though they had worked together for decades and never talked on the phone. On screen they got along, but off-screen things were different. He thought Mike had been waiting for a long time for a chance to get rid of him from the show, and since Frank wasn't working, that chance finally came up. Fans were shocked. They had been traveling, laughing and making a popular show together for years. How could they just break up like that? As expected, there were a lot of arguments on the internet. Some people said Mike was to blame for not being there for Frank, while others said Frank's personal problems were the real reason he left. As Frank spoke, Mike replied that everyone on the show cared about him and that getting him back on track had not been easy. As always, the truth was more complex than any one story.